And they phrased it, they commended it to us in a technological spirit. That there was psychic technology. That there was something that you could go way beyond anything that could be done through the physical sciences. You could cause your physical body to disintegrate to another level of vibration, and then transmit it and reassemble it somewhere else. You could live as long as you like because you control the fundamental processes. You could determine, if you decided to die, where you would be reborn, exactly. You would be a complete master of life. That charlatan Lobsang Rampa, who writes about Tibetan mastery. People read that because they think that there may be a way of beating the game. So therefore, the wise men of Asia were represented through this kind of propaganda as masters of life, as, for example, people whose emotions didn't bother them, who could put up with any amount of pain by simply turning off their feelings. Who could foretell the future, who could read your thoughts, and who were above all kinds of ordinary human frailty. Well, when I first met Buddhist priests, Zen masters, swamis, all these wise men from the East, one of the first things that impressed itself upon me was that they were perfectly ordinary human beings. They had bad tempers, they were fussy about certain things, they just acted as I would expect human beings to act. And so at first I was very disappointed. I thought they had feet of clay, that they didn't come up to these promises of psychotechnology. But after a while I got to realize why not, that they had already thought all that through. They had thought through what might be done if one had all these powers, and had decided that wasn't what they wanted. Of this kind in Sanskrit are called siddhi, S-I-D-D-H-I. But there is hardly one decent scripture or text on yoga that does not say again and again, if you get siddhi, ignore them. Go on to something else. These are only the foothills. These are, furthermore, not only foothills, but they are seductive, blind alleys. Won't take you anywhere at all. Now, I think that this is the greatest possible lesson for the Western world to learn, because we are so hung up on the idea of power, of control, of being able to make everything go the right way. And if we've never thought it through, when you get control of it, what are you going to do with it? Supposing I'm an alchemist, and I have a whole secret closet full of love filters, very potent ones. If I see a desirable woman, all I have to do is to offer her a cigarette, or give her a glass of wine with one of my secret potions in it. And instantly, I'm her master. Now, when I think that through, what will I do with the situation? Because all I've got again is that plastic doll that when I push it, it does what I tell it to and doesn't have any comeback. What you always are looking for in things is where the surprise is there, where there's a comeback. And you say, my God, this thing is alive. It has a will of its own. It is not in my control. And I would like to have a relationship with something like that, because it would never be dull. And also, you would feel true affection. After all, you can make love to yourself in a mirror. You can have one of those Dutch wives. You buy them in a place in Kobe, where you get these rubber girls that you fill with hot water. But what an awful thing, when you realize that this thing has no gear, no surprise in it, no thing that it does on its own, you see. And so when you think things through like that, you understand you do not want power. You don't want to control everything. Therefore, these Zen Buddhist masters that I met and others were not super occultists. And very many Westerners who visited Japan expecting to get a Satori as a result of which they would know everything and control everything, were grievously disappointed and said there's not much in this after all. You're not victims of a scheme of
Spirit
things,
is not lost.
of a mechanical world or of an autocratic God.
A broken blade is
The
more
life
than
you're
the
living
likes of you.
is what you have put yourself into. Only you don't admit it
Of the past.
because you want to play the game that it's happened to you. In other words, I got mixed up in this world. My parents, I had a father who got hot pants over a girl, and she
Learn
was my
from your
mother.
mistakes.
And he was just a horny old man. And as a result of that, I got born. And I blame him for it and say, well, that's your fault. You've got to look after me.
What
And he
conflict
says,
awaits?
I don't see why I should look after you. You're just a result. But let's suppose we admit that I really wanted to get born. And that I was the ugly gleam in my father's eye when he approached my mother. That was me.
Lord mirrors its own light.
I was desire. And I deliberately got involved in this thing. And that even if I got myself into an awful mess, and I got born with syphilis and the Great Siberian Itch and tuberculosis and in a Nazi concentration camp, nevertheless, this was a game which was a very far-out
Broken
play.
blade is more than enough for the likes of
It was a
you.
kind of cosmic
So
masochism
long I've wandered.
that I did. Isn't that an optimal game rule for life? Because if you play life on the supposition that you're a helpless little puppet who got involved, or if you play it on the supposition that it's a frightful, serious risk and that we really ought to do something about it and so on, it's a drag.
So long I've wandered. Where should I proceed?
Really and truly, we are all in a state of total bliss and delight. But we are going to pretend we aren't just for kicks. You play non-bliss in order to be able to experience bliss. And you can go as far out as non-bliss as you want to go. And when you wake up, it'll be great. You know, you can slam yourself on the head with a hammer because it's so nice when you stop. And it makes you realize, you see, how great things are when you forget that that's the way it is. And that's just like black and white. You don't know black unless you know white. You don't know white unless you know black. It's simply fundamental. So then, my metaphysics, let me be perfectly frank with you, are that there is the central self. You could call it God, you can call it anything you like. And it's all of us. It's playing all the parts of all beings whatsoever, everywhere and anywhere. And it's playing the game of hide and seek with itself. It gets lost, it gets involved in the farthest out adventures, but in the end, it always wakes up and comes back to itself. And when you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me. And since you're all here and engaged in this sort of inquiry and listening to this sort of lecture, I assume that you're all on the process of waking up. Or else you're teasing yourselves with some kind of flirtation with waking up,
To end violence.
which you're not serious about. But I assume maybe you are, not serious but sincere, that you are ready to wake up. So then, when you're in the way of waking up and finding out who you really are, you meet a character called a guru. As the Hindus say this word, the teacher, the awakener. And what is the function of a guru? He's the man who looks at you in the eye. Oh, come on. I know who you are. You know, you come to the guru and say, "Sir, I have a problem. I'm unhappy and I want to get one up on the universe, or I want to become enlightened. I want spiritual wisdom." Ah, and the guru looks at you and says, "Who are you?" You know Sri Ramana Maharshi, that great Hindu sage of modern times? People used to come to him and say, "Master, who was I in my last incarnation?" He would say, "Who is asking the question?" And he'd look at you and say, basically, go right down to it. You're looking at me, you're looking out, and you're unaware of what's behind your eyes. Go back in and find out who you are, where the question comes from. And if you looked at a photograph, I have a gorgeous photograph. And you look in those, I walk by it every time I go out of the front door. And I look at those eyes and the humor, the lilting laugh that says, "Oh, come on." Shiva, I recognize you. When you come to my door and you say, I'm so-and-so, I say, ha ha, what a funny way God has come on today. There are all sorts of tricks, of course, that gurus play. They say, well, we're going to put you through the mill. And the reason they do that is simply that
Learn from your mistakes.
won't wake up until you feel you've paid a price for it. In other words, the sense of guilt that one has, or the sense of anxiety, is simply
My hands are stained.
the way one experiences keeping the game of disguise going on. Do you see that? Supposing you say, I feel guilty.
What conflict is this?
Christianity makes you feel guilty for existing. That somehow the very fact that you exist is an affront. You are a fallen human being.
My spirit is not lost.
I remember as a child when we went to the services of the church on Good Friday, they gave us each a colored postcard with Jesus crucified on it. And it said underneath, this have I done for thee. What doest thou for me? You know, you felt awful. You nailed that man to the cross. You have crucified Christ. In this universe, there is one great energy, and we have no name for it. People have tried various names for it, like God, like Brahman, like Tao. But in the West, the word God has got so many funny associations attached to it that most of us are bored with it. When people say God the Father Almighty, most people feel funny inside. And so we like to hear new words. We like to hear about Tao, about Brahman, about Shinyo, and Tathata, and such strange names from the Far East, because they don't carry the same associations of mawkish sanctimony and funny meanings from the past. And actually, some of these words that the Buddhists use for the basic energy of the world really don't mean anything at all. The word tathata, which is translated from the Sanskrit into suchness or thusness or something like that, really means something more like da-da-da, based on the word tat, which in Sanskrit means that. And so in Sanskrit it is said, tat tvam asi, that thou art, or in modern American, you're it. But da, that's the first sound a baby makes when it comes into the world. Because the baby looks around and says, da, that. And fathers flatter themselves and think it's saying da, which means daddy. But according to Buddhist philosophy, all this universe is one tathata. That means 10,000 functions or 10,000 things, one suchness. And we're all one suchness. And that means
that suchness comes and goes like everything else, because this whole world is an on and off system. As the Chinese say, it's the yang and the yin. And therefore it consists of now you see it, now you don't, here you are, here you aren't. Because that's the very nature of energy, to be like waves, and waves have crests and troughs. Only we, being under a certain kind of sleepiness or illusion, imagine that the trough is going to overcome the wave or the crest. The yin, the dark principle, is going to overcome the yang or the light principle, and that off is finally going to triumph over on. Gee, supposing darkness did win out, wouldn't that be terrible? And so we're constantly trembling and thinking that it may, because after all, isn't it odd that anything exists? It's most peculiar. It requires effort, it requires energy. And it would be so much easier for there to have been nothing at all. Therefore we think, well, since the is side of things is so much effort, you always give up after a while and you sink back into death. But death is just the other face of energy. And it's the rest, the not being anything around, that produces something around, just in the same way that you can't have solid without space, or space without solid. When you wake up to this, you are relieved of fundamental terror. That doesn't mean you're always going to be a great hero, that you won't jump when you hear it bang, that you won't worry occasionally, that you won't lose your temper. It means, though, that fundamentally, deep down within you, you will be able to be human, enlightened men and women in the pains, difficulties, and struggles that naturally go with human existence.
conflict awaits. My hand is tied. spirit is not lost. lost.